Hello YouTube, I'm Todd Chitwood and welcome to my channel. I appreciate you stopping by. I recently completed building a home recording booth to record voiceover commercials, narrations, trainings, etc. I'm a complete novice to anything like this and can tend to overthink things. At the same time, I'm also very fortunate that I had all the tools needed for this project and learned to use many of them during the build. Can you say dado blade? I did a lot of YouTube surfing and used ideas from a variety of sources, including Bill DeWeese, Jordan Reynolds, Aaliyah Schaefer, Export Village, and others. As far as framing the space, I found many videos on building small outdoor storage sheds to be extremely helpful. As with anything, you take what you believe is the best of all worlds and combine them for the best outcome. As with many construction projects, a trip to the local lumber yard is necessary. I wished I could say I only made one trip, but that's not the case. As I got into the project, I discovered that I did a lot of engineering on the fly as I encountered various situations. I also am not talented in determining the amount of material that I would need, so therefore I was always short and had to go back for extra. Therefore, I probably made about 50 trips to the various merchants for this project. Just warning you. There was not any place inside my house to set up a recording booth. I initially considered our walk-in closet, however there was too much environmental noise from HVAC which really prohibited this. We have a large garage that is subterranean on 3 concrete walls. Additionally, we have one room off the garage that measures 21 by 14 feet that is nearly dead silent. I decided to build a booth rather than purchasing one because I could not afford to purchase a commercial booth of this size. I'm a big guy and wanted a little elbow room, thus a 4x6 room would be required. I started with a 4x6 1-inch thick hard rubber mat that is used for flooring in horse stalls. I wanted to isolate the wood base of the booth off the floor in a floating manner to accomplish 2 things. First, as a moisture barrier, and second, to isolate the booth from any vibrations that may come through the house foundation. The base itself was constructed using 2x4 material and studs 16-inch on center. Instead of using nails, which would have made the project much quicker, I decided to use deck screws so I could disassemble the booth if needed. In hindsight, I learned that I should have used 4x4s for the perimeter of the base, as it would have given me a larger area of bite when I stood the walls up and attached them to the floor. However, this worked fine with a little angle on the deck screws in some areas. In between the studs, I inserted Roxul fire and soundproofing insulation. Once the base was complete, it was placed on the rubber matting and I began to work on framing the walls. As with the base, the walls were constructed using 2x4 materials with studs 16-inch on center. I framed the door in traditional fashion, utilizing both jack and king studs. This may be a little overkill, but the door is pretty heavy. I left myself minimal clearance on the door, giving myself 1/8 of an inch on all sides. I also began to think about sound vibration coming through the walls, being transmitted from the OSB siding into the studs. I felt that if rubber would work on the floor, perhaps it would also work to buffer the vibration and sound transmission from the OSB into the studs. So, another trip back to Pacific Rubber and I purchased some 3/8-inch rubber sheeting and began to cut into strips and use my pneumatic staple gun to attach it to the 2x4 studs. Prior to putting the exterior siding on the walls, I did dry fit it to think and ponder on my next steps. As you can see, with the siding in place, the door is a very tight fit. More on this later. I Googled and read a lot about green glue soundproof caulking. It is magic, in a sense, as it turns sound into heat. I'm not a chemist, so I have no idea how this occurs, but the only difference I could find between green glue caulking and regular caulk was that green glue is very flexible and will not dry out, harden, or crack. So I elected to go with super stretch caulking that was half the price of the green glue and began to seal all surfaces where the studs, rubber, and OSB met. A common theme that I saw over and over again was that if air can get into your booth, sound can get in. So I decided to seal this airtight as possible. Once I let the caulking dry, I stood the walls and attached them to the base. Note that I installed a sheet of 3/8-inch neoprene rubber on the floor, again as a sound barrier to prevent that transition from the base into the walls. I did put protective paper over it to protect it while I continued to work. I elected to leave one end of the booth open for convenience and comfort while I installed the Roxul and a layer of 1/2-inch soundboard insulation. At every step, I sealed all the soundboard seams with super stretch caulk and then applied flashing tape over the top of the caulk seams. Once all 3 walls were covered in soundboard, I stood the final front or business end wall up. As you can see, I installed a 2.5-inch PVC pipe to run electrical and computer cords through. The height of this PVC conduit on the inside of the booth is at 29 inches, which will emerge just below the working surface in the booth. On the exterior, this emerges at the base of the wall. I saw this example on a soundproof recording by Expert Village on YouTube. Once the cables are passed through, the PVC will be stuffed with Roxol insulation and the openings on either end covered with a substance called quiet putty, which is very consistent with silly putty. Once the front wall was up and in place, I sealed all the seams where the OSB siding met with super stretch. Over this, I applied a layer of flashing tape. Once dried, I covered with some inexpensive 1x3 pine trim. I then used a router and chisel to make a 1/4-inch deep groove in the door frame and installed a 1/2-inch foam rubber weather stripping to create a door seal. It was at this point that I had much difficulty in getting the door closed. I removed the door, reframed the handled edge, and did a lot of hand planing and sanding to achieve the desired result. It is tight and a little bit difficult to get closed. I may have to install a 3/8-inch weather strip just to loosen the fit in the future. You can see on the door and through it, if you use your imagination, that the 5/8-inch drywall is nearly completely installed. I did watch several YouTube videos on how to cut and hang drywall. It is very heavy and a very dusty process. I had to power wash the garage floor after the drywall was complete just to get that drywall dust that had embedded itself into the concrete floor washed off. I followed the same procedure with the drywall by caulking and applying flashing tape to the seams. I did not mud or tape the drywall as my plan was to cover the surfaces with carpet, and there would be really no benefit from doing a professional job per se. I found some carpet at Home Depot for pretty cheap. It's thin and does not have any rubber backing. It came in a 6x8-foot roll. I cut this to size for the ceiling and walls and wrapped the ends around a 1x3 pine board. This was then screwed into place. I did experience some extra carpet in some areas which I was able to gather at the floor base and staple so that the wrinkle was eliminated. I did wrap some additional carpet around some 1x3 pine and screwed it into place for sectioning the walls and ceiling so that the carpet would not sag over time. I then decided to build a table for a work surface. The legs were cut from 2x4 material. The top is fashioned from OSB, which I sanded fairly smooth. I trimmed the top with 1x3 clear pine and installed this heavy, overlapping the top by about 3/8 of an inch. I then installed a 3/8-inch layer of neoprene rubber on the desktop to keep the sound from bouncing off the top. I taped off the neoprene and did several layers of clear coat on the pine trim and stained the legs mocha. I then test fitted it to ensure it was all clear. Then I installed the foam acoustic treatments on the walls. I installed my gear, which consists of a Surface Pro tablet, Rode NT1A mic, Yamaha AGO3 interface, Beyerdynamic 770 Pro headphones, and a Rode PSA1 mic boom. I also mounted my Logitech webcam on the wall for Skype sessions. My wife has named this booth the Cash Box, fingers crossed, and my mom calls it the Man Cave. My mom found this sign made from pieces of license plates, and I accented it with a dollar store push-on-off light that reads Live Mic. For this touch, I put stick-on letters in Live Mic on the white light cover and sprayed it red. Once dried, I removed the letters to reveal the words Live Mic. At this point, the construction of the booth was complete. I fired up all my gear to do some baseline testing. With the help of voiceover talent Bill DeWeese's talented ear, he discovered a non-environmental hiss in my recording, and I also had a bit of a boxy sound. I isolated the hiss to a power cord to the Yamaha interface, and the Yamaha also contributed to my boxy sound as well. I removed all the acoustic foam and made some soundboard panels which I covered in fabric and installed. I also made bass traps with 1x4 pine and Roxol covered in black burlap material and installed in the upper corners. Additionally, I purchased a Focusrite Scarlett I2I interface to see what sound I got out of it compared to the Yamaha. I was shocked at the difference. In my case, the I2I had a far superior sound compared to the Yamaha. The I2I was used for this narration. I really like the features of the Yamaha of being able to loop back recordings so that whoever you're Skyping with can hear them too. And it's for this reason I'll continue to troubleshoot this with Yamaha. And here I am, excited with the booth and my new future. Thanks for stopping by, hanging out, and watching. I hope you found this helpful. Have a great day.